We're now live.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Pension Board. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to view the meeting using the link on the agenda. No apologies have been received, although I understand, Liz, you're going to have to leave after an hour or so. So, moving to the agenda. The first item, declarations of conflicts of interest. If anyone has one, would they please declare it now? Fine, no conflicts. We move on to minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have any errors, omissions? If not, I will sign a copy of the minutes and send them to Michelle. Okay, next item on the agenda is public question time, and we have two questions. Let me just have a look. From firstly Joanna Blackman. I'll ask Justin to read the question out, and James will give the answer.
Thank you, Chair. The question is, at the recent Pensions Committee meeting on 17th of January, I gave a presentation on behalf of Fossil Free Shropshire on the case for a speedy divestment from fossil fuels. I would like to hear the board members' response both to this and to the committee's decision to reject the council's divestment motion. However, I am puzzled and disappointed to see that the opportunity for board members to raise any questions following the Pension Committee's discussion and vote on the council's divestment motion is in the exempt part of the meeting, item 9. Surely all board members could maintain the committee's division into public and exempt items and address these separately within two separate agenda items. Is there any reason in law why the Pensions Board could not consider the decisions made within the public part of the Pensions Committee meetings within the public part of board meetings?
And the answer, please, James.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The response is the Pensions Committee have delegated authority to make the decisions in relation to the Shropshire County Pension Fund. The Pension Board is not a decision-making body, but an oversight committee. Several Pension Board members attended both the public and private parts of the Pension Committee meeting on the 17th of January, and so heard all of the presentations, public statements and debate regarding the council motion and the decisions made. The Pensions Committee voted 4-2 in favour not to support the council's motion, and there have been public media statements issued following this meeting providing further information around the decisions taken. All Pensions Committee reports go to the Pension Board just for information. All Pension Board members are invited to the public and private parts of the committee meetings. It has been agreed with the Chair that all reports are taken as one item on the agenda for members to note, as public Pension Committee reports have already been debated and voted on in the public domain by Pensions Committee, who have delegated authority to make all decisions relating to the pension fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've had another question from Martin Oddsocks.
Okay, thank you, Chair. At its meeting on 17th of January, the Pensions Committee rejected Shropshire Council's motion calling on the fund to divest from fossil fuels over a 3-year time frame from July 2020. The Pension Committee received a climate risk report prepared by LGPS Central, which relies on the IPCC's scientific assessment report of 2013, when an updated 2021 version was readily available. Furthermore, the committee has received questionable advice from Mercer, including an assessment that a 4 centigrade global heating scenario would barely impact on its return. Are the board satisfied that the Pensions Committee has acted legally, acted in keeping with its fiduciary duty, and acted in the best interest of its members, contributing employers and other stakeholders?
And James, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The response is the Pensions Board are satisfied that the Pension Committee have acted legally, acted in keeping with its fiduciary duty and acted in the best interests of its members, contributing employers and other stakeholders in all decisions it makes in relation to Shropshire County Pension Fund and in accordance with proper advice and within a strict, robust and transparent governance process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, we move on to administration and regulatory updates. Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. The report gives an update there at 7 about some regulation changes that have come in recently from around about the transfers. So we now do have some regulations that give administering authorities a few more tools and rights to stop a transfer if we think certain red flags have been raised regarding why the individual is transferring or that they're being scammed. This is all to do with the scam publicity you see on the on the TV and everything nowadays, and the government trying to protect people's pension benefits, especially when they're built in to occupational pension schemes. So we've changed our own in-house procedures now, and we're ensuring that the new red flags are being looked at, and we've got documentation to prove that we've done this. Cyber security, point 8 there is.
Sorry, Debbie, just on that. I mean, I'm taking it looks like a very helpful change in the regulations. It's not too big a problem for us in Shropshire, is it?
No, it's not too big a problem at all, John. We've always had robust systems in place for many years now. We've had our own internal documentation that ensures we can prove that we've sent all of the scam documentation, that we've ensured that the individual is fully aware of when and how they can take our benefits, that if the transfer is over 30,000, they've taken the right advice, because they have to take advice in certain circumstances. So we have done that, and to date we haven't had any appeals or anybody coming back and saying they were unhappy with the transfers that have gone out. There are quite a few data subject requests around the country going on where people think that they may have been scammed out of their LG benefits, but currently Shropshire hasn't had a lot of traffic around that area.
Thank you for that.
Debbie, could I, it's Mike, could you give us some indication of the numbers that were involved in here, in terms of how many people do request transfers and we've had to look at?
Not off the top of my head, but I can do. Usually they're in the annual report, but I can easily feedback Mike regarding our numbers that we have of transfers. There'll be two different numbers. We obviously have transfer out quotes, and then we'd have which ones went to actual transfers. So I can get the numbers for you of the last year and get those to you. If Becky looks to be scrolling, if she finds them somewhere in the background while I'm talking, John, I can't do both, but if Becky does, we'll let you know. But yes, we can take that on board and let you know.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the sort of direct scams, I mean, if people come and say they've been to a financial advisor who advises them that they get a much better return if they took the money out of our fund and stuck it in somewhere else. I mean, some of that type of advice that people are given is very dubious indeed by small-time financial advisors. It can be very dubious. So does this apply to that type of advice, or is there a sort of regulatory framework where you say, okay, this person is regulated, and you know, if they give this advice to move it, it should be moved and we can't challenge it?
We don't see that advice, John, so we couldn't, and we don't have anything that allows us to challenge the advice they've been given. If somebody, they've got to do that themselves through the FSA if they weren't happy with the advice. Those advisors should be all regulated. In the last couple of years, there's actually been tightening up on the FSA regulation of who can actually give transfer advice and who can give transfer advice out of defined benefit schemes. What we do is ensure that the person is registered, who's giving the advice is registered to do so. So one of the checks that we do in-house is check up on that advisor. So as long as that advisor is on the right FSA lists, then that's as far as we can go with checking it.
So what's the difference, Debbie? It's Mike again. What's the difference between a red flag and an amber flag? How do you designate those?
There is guidance on the PASA website and on TPR and on the websites out there that are telling us, tied in with this legislation, what to look for. So what we're doing at the moment is going through that guidance and then pulling in a documentation for our own team so as they know what to look for. Some of the red flags and some of the amber flags are very woolly. There are indications of looking, is somebody vulnerable? So regarding not a vulnerable pensioner at that end of their lifespan, if you've got a member who's doing a transfer, then obviously they're usually prior to retirement age. But the list goes into information as much as, do we think that they are literate? Do we think that they understand what they are being told? Do they? So some of it is going to be beyond what we can do, Mike, but what we have to do is have a process in place to ensure we've perhaps had a discussion with that person, ensure all the documentation has been filled in and looks as if it's been filled in by that individual. So we'll work with the guidance as best as we can.
Right. Thank you.
Once we're currently working on this at the moment, so we're going through all of that guidance and giving myself an opportunity of extra work here. I'm quite happy to give you an update of what changes we introduce and perhaps bring the documentation for you to have a look at the next board meeting.
Yeah, I think
if you're interested.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I can
But
just
finally,
add, Mike, sorry.
I was just going to say, I was surprised that AVC contributions are included. I mean, I can see that they're part of pension, but often AVCs are piled in by people just before they retire or close to retirement and then taken out in a lump sum anyway. So I'm surprised that they're captured by this these regulations.
I think it's because we have to offer the defined benefit public sector schemes now do have to offer an AVC. So even though we don't do it ourselves, we are the policy holder. So it's just in capturing that we make sure that, you know, we've covered our statutory obligations.
Right. OK. I'll follow that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Communications. Is there any sort of benchmarking on? I mean, I assume most local authority schemes do have online things like the member self-service, My Pension Online. Do we have any benchmarks about how many percentages of members that are accessing these? Are we doing well, I suppose, is the question.
Only what we can pick up publicly, isn't it, Becky, in some of the press. The last time we saw anything in the press, we were doing fairly well against the rest of the suppliers out there. But it's an area that we know that if we're pushing digital and it's an area that we need to make sure that people are more comfortable in and are engaging. So yes, John, in answer to your question, our statistics are quite good and very good against a lot, but we don't think they're good enough for pushing forward with a full sort of, well, it's never going to go full digital, but to try and get people to engage more with digital.
Excellent.
Regarding digital engagement, it's not covered in the report, but one of the areas we're looking to utilise the online system for more is interaction with members over the next couple of years, of perhaps engagement of them using the digital portals for retiring or bringing their deferred benefits. So somebody who left a while ago and is now coming to retirement age, bringing those benefits in. So the more we can engage with them whilst they're working and get them to use the portal, looking at their annual benefit statements, looking at the information on there, I think will also help them in retirement. Have you got anything else to add on portal take up, Beck?
Just that anecdotally, I'm part of a comms group, a national comms group, and our figures for portal take up are high. Because we were quite an early adopter in pushing this system. That said, there's other funds who were just adopted recently, and they are kind of creeping up to around the levels that we are that we're at. But as a comms group, what we are doing is sharing best practice, and there's actually a document about to come out from the LGA to go out to all funds to share best practice of how to sort of engage members for either big funds, small funds to use these online portals. And we have, John, actually asked whether it's difficult to organise just for one fund, but whether this can come from the LGA to try and get some sort of benchmarking in place. So if all funds could feed into the LGA what their percentages are, and then we have a good picture of, oh, that fund's doing really well, so why are they doing really well? So let's see some of so that is they are conversations that are happening at national comms level. So I can provide an update when I know further if that's going to take off, really.
Thank you.
Becky. There's an update at point 11 on an item that the board had raised previously about what the fund can do to protect our vulnerable sort of scheme members. Primarily, what we can do is try and protect the people who are transferring out, and also when the pensions are in payment. There's very little we can do whilst they're still members of the scheme. We're hoping that their employers are doing all that they can to look after them. But we've just done an update there of some processes. We've had a look around, and we've now got direct links to the first point of contact within Shropshire Council of how, if we had any red flags around that we think someone's vulnerable, then we can contact them, and knowing what we can do. The last point of contact, we've been told by the contact team at the council, is the police anyway, so that we can always actually email our local police and actually say to them if that person is here. Of course, if with our pensioners, they're all around the country, so what we are going to do is, now we know the procedure for Shropshire Council, if anybody is we've got worries about in other parts of the country, we know where to look on their websites to look if they've got the similar team. So hopefully that will help us protect members. We have got one at the moment who is struggling to fill in their retirement forms, and so we are following this process, so we're actually putting it into place straight away. Any questions on point 11? If not, I'll go on I'll go on to 12 there, because the chair did ask me just to do an update on our employers within the fund, what and who can come into the Shropshire Fund. So I've done a little bit of an update there, sort of 12.1 to 12.3 around scheme employers, which are bodies that basically under the scheme rules either have to offer LGPS to their members, like the councils, the schools, the colleges, and then academy conversions, they have to. So, but they are under slightly different regulation to the councils. Admission bodies we've got there, and designating bodies. So designating bodies are town and parish councils. So they can offer membership to their employees. They don't need any legal agreement to do so. They just have to designate make a resolution that designates which people or which groups of people can join the pension scheme. But admission bodies, so 12.3 there, are those bodies where councils or academies are outsourcing services. So we've got Shropshire Council historically, the waste collection, that's outsourced and has been outsourced for many years. Academies are outsourcing a lot of catering and cleaning that they think can be provided more cheaply by private contractors. So they have to have legal agreements, so admission agreements, to come into the pension scheme, and they are time consuming. They are not good at it. They take an awful long time to get into place, and we are pushing nationally to the government scheme advisory board to actually accept that something's got to change in this area, because it's not going smoothly for any funds. We're not alone on this. We've talked about it nationally. All LGPS pension funds have issues with bodies not engaging. So even though they have to offer the pension scheme, the body that's outsourcing has to ensure they offer it. It's left to us to chase all of these. And you will have seen on the committee papers, we have recently just tightened up on our process and procedures to not continually continue after a certain period of time to chase these documents. We've introduced a new process to clearly tell the members that are affected that their rights have been compromised by the actions of their outsourcing employer and their new employer, and we can do very little else other than when we get to that stage do that. But we've got some numbers in there for you to have a look at as well, just to show you the growth. So you'll see that currently we've got in the 2021 report, and I've given you as Appendix A the list of the employers that are currently in the scheme for you, rather than having to search for it. So you can see who's in the scheme, who's active in the scheme as well. Split between the sort of scheme employers, designated bodies and admitted bodies. So you'll see at the moment we've got 146 active employers. So those are employers that are sending us information every month on their active members. We've got 208 employers that we're still looking after benefits for. So they may only have pensioners or deferred members. So 146 of those 208 are active, and then where the split is. But you'll also see in Appendix B there how it was quite interesting when John raised the topic. I knew that we'd done something in the last few years, and it was an area that we dipped into back in 2017 there for the some meetings that were held, just to show how the timeline had changed for how employers have changed within the fund. So you'll see there at Appendix B that back in 2000 was when private contractors were given access should their contracts be outsourced from the council. So going through there, and just the 2009, the change in the districts here and the unitaries splitting out. Schools and academies have only been able to convert to an academy since 2010, so that is now coming up 12 years ago. And an auto enrolment back in 2012 also introduced a greater take up of our town and parish councils, because of course prior to them they didn't have to legislatively offer anything to their employees, but when auto enrolment came in, because they have this automatic right to use the local government pension scheme if they want to, without going and having to set up something with a private pension company, a lot chose us. So that sort of showed you that there was what the increase was: 56 employers back in 97 and 164 in 2017. Those were total employers at that point in time. So you'll see that 164 in 2017 has now gone to 208 just literally 4 years later. So we are increasing all the time. It's one of the areas that I report on that increases our workloads. We have had an increase in staffing resource over the last 2 years, which we're still trying to recruit to fill all of those posts. But this is just one of the areas that's increasing the workload, and I'm happy to take questions on that.
Okay, any questions?
Well, just a comment really that from me, that when you do look at that set of tables that you've just been referring to, Debbie, I mean, if you take out about 4 of the large contributors to the scheme, you've got a whole pile of very, very small numbers, very small numbers involved with across a whole range of organisations, and I can just see that just causes a lot of paperwork, a lot of administration, and probably a lot of difficulty in getting everybody up to be on board to do their stuff as and when it's required.
Totally agree, Mike. The administration for an employer with 2 employees against one with 6,000 is the same. You're still collecting one contribution. Yes, getting the data for the people takes us a bit longer for the bigger employers, but when you've got an admission agreement or trying to do that, it makes no difference as to the size of the employer. For us, the administration effort is still the same. If they're late with their contributions, same effort for one employer who's got 2 as somebody who's got thousands.
So when you put this sort of effort that's required alongside the point you've raised elsewhere about looking for new staff and staff leaving the administration service, and you're still recruiting for last year's leavers, are we reaching a crunch point somewhere along the line that we're going to have trouble meeting all our administrative requirements, Debbie?
That is a risk, Mike. Yes, it's on our risk register. Recruitment is the big crunch point at the moment, and I will be taking up with the council's HR department to know whether we are alone or whether this is LG as a whole, that people don't want to come and work for us. Why not? So it's an area that's on discussion weekly at the moment with me and my management team. Liz,
yeah. Liz?
You're on mute, Liz.
You're muted, Liz, I'm afraid.
The recruitment in the area, in the region, it's tough. It's something we're struggling with at the university too.
I think
I wouldn't say that it's just LGPS. I think it's much wider than that.
So it is an area, Mike, that we will need to tackle and assess is it throwing money at it? Is it making better job descriptions? Is it giving a better training package? I don't know. I have a question mark over this at the moment. It is an area that we are struggling with.
Stepping back a bit, what is the attraction of joining the scheme? It would seem that a lot of very small employers are actually very keen to join the scheme. Now, I know I can understand it's a brilliant scheme, but what from their point of view?
The outsourcing, so the admission bodies have to, because there's legislation in place that protects the members, so they don't really have a choice, John. So if somebody is working for the council and the council outsources a service, then it was realised back in 2007, I think, the last legislation for the pensions direction order, and then 2013 for new fair deal, which protects the other public sectors and the academies. That's there to protect our individual employee members. So if they're in a statutory employer who has offered the statutory public sector pension scheme, the LGPS, if that employer chooses to outsource that service that they are providing themselves currently, and they still need to provide, but they give it to a private contractor, there's legislation that protects those members. So that's fair enough. Those employers and contractors don't necessarily all understand what they're taking on. So local government pensions administrators have the issue that a tiny school will outsource a small cleaning contract with 2 cleaners. The contractor who takes it on has no idea what being in the LGPS actually means. So we end up with the issues regarding that. So that's an education side for us we've been working on for many years, to try and get the schools to understand what outsourcing does mean pensions wise. You know, bottom line for schools is, can this contract be done cheaper elsewhere? But we need to protect those members, so they have legislation that protects them. Town and parish councils who choose to come in, I think, are now understanding, John, that it may not be their best option because of the cost. Because of it being such a good scheme, that the 2/3 of the costs are usually taken. This is what comes out of the valuation. How do you set employers' contributions rates? Then 2/3 of the costs, are really falling on the employer. The employee has a fixed cost that can change, but it can only change through legislation, whereas the employer's costs get rebalanced every 3 years. So I think a few town and parish councils now are starting to understand that it may not be their best route.
I'm just looking at the table that for some employers, probably 60–70% of the contributions are actually from the employer. Much higher than the employee contributions, much higher.
Yeah, and what we don't do now is, if anybody from the community who historically there has been bodies like Age Concern, didn't have to be in the pension scheme, but they chose to be. So we've had some bodies, community admission bodies in the past, who've come along. Some have had guarantees, which protects the pension fund from their main local council. But what we're doing now is actually saying we will not accept those unless they are fully guaranteed and almost grouped with their council. So because of this issue, that actually it's expensive for them, it's administratively quite burdensome. So more work goes into ensuring we don't take bodies that we don't have to anymore.
So it's a case of a bit of negative marketing, really, isn't it?
Yes. Well, only realistic. Effort goes into being realistic to make them to understand what it is they would be taking on and what we would have to have in place and who they would have to guarantee them. So they, it's working with that other body as well to ensure they fully understand what the liabilities could be. Yeah.
Are there ever cases where bodies choose that could join not to and go elsewhere?
Sorry?
Are there ever cases where admission bodies decide to go elsewhere for their pensions?
They have historically. Schools outsourcings, the legislation, well, not legislation, the guidance that's from the government regarding new fair deal basically states it should be the scheme the individuals were in, so they have a fuller protection. There is a small get out clause that says unless there is a really, really good reason not to, so there is an exemption there that can be used. Still in the legislation that covers the councils, the academies, sort of the fair deal, the best value bodies. So if somebody is classed in legislation as a best value body, there is still an option for the contractor to go to a broadly comparable scheme, but that broadly comparable scheme has to be certificated by the government actuaries department as being broadly comparable to the LGPS. So there are other hoops that they would have to go into a broadly comparable scheme. There used to be some bodies that used broadly comparable schemes. Those were the bigger national employers that were doing some of the bigger outsourcings. We haven't had anybody asked to use a broadly comparable scheme for an awful long time. When the schemes started changing within the small periods of time with our legislation changing, the government actuaries department also got behind with actually doing certificates. So they went a bit more out of fashion. So currently, John, we haven't had a request to go to a different type of scheme for a long time in an outsourcing.
Right. Yes. I was just picking up on the cost to it. I mean, 12.5. The funds required to obtain actuarial valuation of an employer's liabilities if he's leaving. That falls on us, not on the exiting employer.
There is a cost. We do pass it on with the exiting employer. So the cost of that valuation will be loaded on if they've got an exit debt. So if they owe us money because their contributions haven't been quite as much as they need to be at that point in time, we load it onto that. If they had a surplus, it will be taken off the surplus. So no, the actuarial cost certificate at the end of the day, we can pass that on. That in the legislation, we don't have to as a fund take that. It is the employee.
Is that a significant sum, Debbie?
A few thousand usually, John. Mike.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Mike, yeah.
Just one from me. It's not in this report, but Debbie, Rebecca, how many missing pensioners have we got at the moment? Hard to reach, impossible to reach.
So the gone away pensioners that we don't know and we don't have an address for.
Correspond with and can't find. Yeah.
I don't think we've got very many of that because we suspend them. We don't pay a pension, Mike, if we don't know their address.
We're talking a few, I would say not hundreds, because we do suspend a pension, and that may seem a bit harsh, but actually that when we don't pay a pension when we don't have an address. So if we have returned post, and this is why the biannual newsletter is really good, because we send that out, and then when we sent the autumn 2021 out, we then get that return post of not at this address, and we suspend that pension. And
we presumably, Becky, we presumably put it in some sort of escrow account, because at some point it could become due to the person when the person identifies it.
Yeah. So what normally happens, well, we stop that pension anyway, because we don't know where that person is. And normally, and this is what happened just before Christmas, that person contacts us because they're obviously they haven't had any pension for that month paid, and then we get new contact details and we can reissue that pension to them. But we've now got a monthly mortality tracing service in place, so we have records provided to us every month of deaths, which are matched up to our record. So that has helped a lot with making sure we don't have any overpayments for deaths, or very reduced overpayments for deaths. And then since we've had this tracing service in place, any pensioners that we have lost contact with, we send them through to our tracing company, and they can check various amounts of different databases to try and then locate our pensioner.
It'd be interesting just to get a view of the sort of numbers we are talking about, perhaps for the next meeting of the board, please. If you're happy with that, John.
We do report it either twice really or quarterly of the numbers that we find through that rate, don't we? So I will check on when that's due.
Okay.
But if you want to know the numbers that we got returned before Christmas, we may have kept that. I don't know, of the last exercise.
We had, I think, just before Christmas, when we sent our In Touch newsletter, we had about 20 early 20s of returned posts that we had to find, but luckily quite a few of them we had email addresses and other contact details for, so we're able to utilize those first. For if we still couldn't contact someone, then we would use the tracing service. Mike, can I just check, do you just want pensioners that we don't have addresses for, or would you like a broader membership, so active members or deferreds? Deferreds will be the higher one, because those are people who've left us.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to put a pile of work in front of you, because you've got plenty on at the moment, but I just think it'd be nice to have an overall view of both retired, full pensioners, as it were, and to see how many of because the people who deferred or moved elsewhere that we don't know of now, we're unlikely perhaps to find very much of in the future, and could become a problem.
Those are our biggest issue, the deferred ones. I mean, you can call them issues.
It's not names and addresses. It's just to get a feel for the numbers. Are we talking?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have that quite readily, so you won't be causing too much work. We do have that as part of our data quality, how many gonaways we've got. But as Debbie said, our pensioner numbers are really low, and they're normally resolved quite quickly, because they're either the member is contact us because they want their money, or unfortunately they've passed away and we can deal with the family then. It's the deferred members who we tend to lose contact with.
Yeah, that's as Becky said. I was just listening to what Becky said, but it is part of our data quality check, Mike. So we do have this readily available, sort of, and it is an area that we keep an eye on, and also do the tracing. But we don't trace automatically now all of the deferred all of the time. We've got some rules of when we'll chase them. So because people can take their benefits from 55, it's better to chase them closer to that. Than spending, we haven't got a finite resource to constantly be chasing people in their 30s who've moved away. So it was a decision made to ensure that we do the best for our members. But yeah, we can get you the number.
Yeah, I think very useful to have. Thank you.
Okay. Any more? Right, well, thank you very much indeed, Debbie. That was really interesting. And yeah, useful report. Thank you. Okay. date of next meeting. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, the next meeting of the Pensions Board will be held at 10 AM on the 29th of April. Dates for the future, we've got the 21st of July, 14th of October, 27th of January 2023 and the 28th of April 2023. These dates are just provisional at the moment.
Could you tell me the April one again, please? Could you?
The 28th of April.
28.
It follows the same pattern for this year.
Okay. Thanks.
There we go.
Yeah, I know I can't do the 21st of July.
Right. Anybody else unable to do that?
What about the 22nd?
Hang on.
Trying to avoid the summer holiday.
No, our school breaks up on about the 20th and I'll be gone.
Oh, it's a nice life.
On holiday.
We could look at the week before.
Yeah.
Right. So can we have a quick look at that now? July. So I know I'm away in July.
Let me get my.
Right. Okay, I'm away the week of the 11th. When's the pension committee that month? Do we know?
Pensions committee is the 24th of June.
Okay.
Provisionally.
Right. So if it would be, if we went for the week of the 4th, that would probably be the 8th. That would give us a couple of weeks after the pension committee, wouldn't it?
From a committee point of view, that's fine.
Okay. Oh, Mike's disappeared. Okay. Would that be okay? Would anyone have problems the week of the 4th of July?
So you're saying Friday the 8th of July, as opposed to the 21st of July?
That's right.
Yes.
Or Thursday the 7th, possibly.
I'm okay.
Both okay for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay for me.
We usually go with the Friday, so.
Okay. Oh, of course it is Friday. Yeah. Sorry. The 8th. Yes, that's fine.
So Friday the 8th of July rather than Friday the 21st.
I think I'm still
of July.
waiting to hear from Helen and Mike.
Did I have my name mentioned?
You did. 8th of July. How's that?
Should be fine.
It's
Yeah.
fine with me.
Yeah.
Helen?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank
Brilliant. Okay then. We'll go for the 8th of July then.
Lovely. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Just going to put that in my diary. Okay then. Right. Well, that's the end of the public part of the meeting. So I would like to resolve that in accordance with the provision of section 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, section 5 of the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England Regulations, and paragraph 3 of the Council's Access to Information Rules, the public and press be excluded during consideration of the following items. Can I have a, I think that probably needs seconding.
I'll second that.
Yeah, okay. Are we happy?
Yeah, happy.
Fine. Okay then.
Give me a moment.
Turn off recording. Yeah.